With an all-out lockdown first in Italy and now France and Spain, where the streets are nearly empty, obviously because of coronavirus fears, plus the shelter-in-place order issued in the San Francisco Bay Area, many are wondering whether Massachusetts will be next. But this afternoon, Governor Charlie Baker said that's not happening now and warned people to stop listening to rumors.
Let me be clear. We are not planning any shelter-in-place orders. In times of crisis, it's imperative that everyone get their news from legitimate places, and sometimes that's not from your friends, neighbor.
At the national level, the message has been much the same, with the Trump administration urging people to get their information from them. But a lot of people are all out ignoring top officials, and people like me for that matter, thanks to widespread partisan distrust about coronavirus information. A new PBS-NPR Marist poll finds 91% of Democrats don't trust Trump on this issue. 60% of Republicans don't trust what the news media says about the virus. And more than half of Republicans think the crisis is being blown out of proportion, while more than 75% of Democrats view it as a real threat. A partisan divide on a pandemic. My God. So while the top medical minds around the world assure us the threat is real, another threat people are increasingly facing across the country is a financial one. With more out of work every day and many losing all means of income, Trump said today his administration is pushing for action fast. Initially, they'd been pitching a payroll tax cut, but this afternoon, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said they want to get money directly into the hands of the American people.
The payroll tax holiday would get people money over the next 6 to 8 months. We're looking at sending checks to Americans immediately. And what we've heard from hardworking Americans, many companies have now shut down, whether it's bars or restaurants. Americans need cash now, and the president wants to get cash now. And I mean now, in the next 2 weeks.
Mnuchin wouldn't say for exactly how much, saying he'd be talking to Senate Republicans about that. But the proposed checks are part of a larger stimulus plan the administration is pushing, which also includes money for struggling industries they define as airlines and others, and a temporary deferral of maybe $300 billion worth of tax payments. In all, maybe $1 trillion of aid. But the president isn't the only one putting forward assistance plans. A few hours before the president proposed cash handouts, my next guest did as well. Sitting 7 feet away, Congressman Joe Kennedy. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thanks so much.
Good to see you all the way over there.
Indeed. Direct cash payments. Is Trump on the right track?
He is, I think, on this one. And for a couple of reasons here, Jim. First off, I think an awful lot of what we are seeing around the country is people that are scared and people that are uncertain. One, about their own health of their families, health of their friends, and trying to make sure that they can keep their own well-being safe. But the second is there's then financial security. And this whipsaw that you're seeing in the markets, the concerns now of their industries and jobs being shut down for weeks, if not months, and the concerns that they have, again, about how they're going to make their own ends meet. How do you pay your rent, your mortgage, your car payment? And so the importance of a direct cash payment, as you heard the Secretary articulate a moment ago, it's fast, but it also can be used to allow individual families to apply that money how they need it. So to meet, again, that mortgage payment, a car payment, groceries, pharmaceuticals, whatever they need, prescription drugs, whatever they need, and to keep the system actually functioning. And that's absolutely critical at the moment.
Mnuchin wouldn't say an amount, but there were some reports they're talking in the range of $1,000 for every adult. You're talking about a lot more, no?
Yeah, a lot more. And look, I think...
How much more?
So my own proposal here makes a delineation between individuals that are making over $100,000 and those making under $100,000. So for those making under $100,000, I'm suggesting a $4,000 payment being broken up into 2 payments of $2,000, and also $2,000 per child. For folks making over $100,000, it would be half that. So $2,000 broken up in 2 payments, again a month apart, and then $1,000 per child. And the point on this is, yes, it's an impressive sum of money, but we break it up into a month apart to make sure that as folks are struggling to make that rent payment, that mortgage payment, you get some money now that gets you through a month, you get some money in that next month to get you through again. That would provide essentially a bridge for us to get through this crisis till essentially the end of June.
Is Nancy Pelosi on board?
You've seen a number. So I've talked to a number of my colleagues on this already today. We're getting actually robust support from other Democrats in the House caucus, and as well from we saw now Senator Romney.
He's talking about $1,000.
He's talking about
$1,000. A lot less money.
A lot less money, but on the idea of the fact that you've got the administration that was opposed to this a couple days ago, that they are now on board to the idea.
Concept,
you've got
right.
Senator Romney, you've got Senator Tom Cotton, and Tom Cotton and I don't agree on much, but the idea that this is necessary and I think is going to be needed not just because you need to make things meet for the next payment period, but if the president's recommending that you can't get together in groups of more than 10 for 8 weeks, then you're saying you're going to hit multiple payment periods. You need to provide that flexibility for families for a significant period of time.
Can we talk about one other piece of this briefly?
Yeah.
Airline, hospitality, and other industries, cruise industry, he's identified. Beyond whether or not the president should be picking industries, we all remember what happened with the bailout for financial services. Thousands and thousands of bankers and traders got $1 million bonuses with my money. Yep. And everybody watching the show. Is there going to be language proposed in the House, if this is introduced in the Senate, that limits the ability of executives to reward themselves for their good behavior?
There darn well should be. And look, I can't speak to the details of a package that hasn't been shaped yet, but I would say that government, I hope, learned its lesson from last time around to make sure that we are not in a position where our hard-earned tax dollars are going to bail out industry that doesn't need it and doesn't deserve it. But most importantly, I think the piece that I think is critical on this part, Jim, is if we're going to talk about bailouts to industry, let's talk about financial security for American families. Let's make sure that what's behind those industries are workers. Let's make sure those workers can make ends meet. And I think this is, in fact, the best way to do it.
Speaking of workers, one last thing about a package that you already passed. I think based on pressure from House Republicans, workers in firms with more than 500 employees are not entitled to this paid sick leave. This could leave 10, 20, 30 million workers out of this mix. Is that going to get fixed? Or is that a demand that the House is not going to compromise on to expand that? Or are you essentially stuck by your own vote?
No, so this needs to get fixed. The issue there was essentially federal government subsidy of paid leave. And there was a concern, and I think rightfully, that taxpayers shouldn't be subsidizing some of the biggest companies in the country, in the world, for their own paid leave. They can afford to do that in and of themselves.
But if they don't choose voluntarily to do it, their workers are screwed.
So we have to, but this is why, and this is where there was pressure from Republicans, and particularly this administration. This needs to be just blanket policy across the board, period. And you do not, this is the part that is so mind-blowing, and I spoke to Speaker Pelosi about this on the House floor at 12:30 in the morning when this bill was passed on Saturday night, and we spoke about it again on Sunday. She characterized this negotiation as one of the hardest of her entire political career. Think about that. Think about that. Right? But the issue being that if you are trying to actually stop a pandemic, you have to put the policies in place that actually apply to everybody. Because you can't sit there and say, hey, some of us are going to be healthy, some of us aren't going to be, and then try to integrate into society. You're just going to get people sick again. This needs to happen.
You may have preempted this next question, but I hope not. Despite the fact that the American public sees this through a partisan prism, which is appalling to me, is there more bipartisanship? Is there a different feeling in Congress than there was even a month ago? I don't even mean just in impeachment times, but in normal times. Is there more of a collaborative feel, or is it still this pathetic partisan divide?
No, look, I think there is a recognition that is coming rapidly and evolving rapidly that we are in a very serious public health and potentially financial crisis. This started out as a public health crisis, and I think it is merging into a financial one. We can act, if we act aggressively and act decisively, we can stave off that financial crisis. And that's what my package this morning was about, and I think the Secretary's discussion this morning and what the Speaker's been proposing. But there is an acknowledgement that if we do not get in front of this quickly, that we are already so far behind the spread of this disease, we need to act decisively to stave off financial crisis and then continue to actually set up the parameters so that we can effectively respond to a public health crisis. And that's really where the administration has bungled that initial response and has gotten us to where we are.
I know you've suspended your campaign. You're obviously a candidate in the primary against the incumbent, Ed Markey. But I'm going to talk about policy, not politics. He's proposed that the President of the United States use the Defense Production Act to mobilize private industry to produce test kits, necessary equipment. Does that have your support?
Yeah, so I actually, one of our colleagues, I signed on to a letter that they led about a week ago that called for the mobilization of American industry to confront this challenge. We do not have enough personal protective equipment in this country to protect our first responders. I've talked to firefighters around this state that I was out with some the other day that said for their ladder, if they respond to an emergency, the 16 guys on that truck, 4 have masks. 4. One hospital in my district was due to run out of masks on Monday. A hospital ran out of masks on Monday. There's not enough materials to actually create these masks anywhere in the country. We can do more to stand these up, but it's going to take a mobilization to do so. There's not enough ventilators to care for people in this country. This is shameful, and it is where some of our healthcare system was not designed to respond to a pandemic like this. But if we had acted decisively and early, we would have had additional lead time to stand up some of these industries and to actually acquire some of the materials we need to actually protect our frontline responders and the American public. We didn't. We're behind the 8 ball, but we have to act now, which is why, again, I signed on to that letter, and I think Senator Markey's right to make that call.
Only have 15 seconds. What is it like for a politician not to be able to do politics?
It is awkward. But look, at this moment, the number one priority for everybody is the safety and security of the American public, of our constituents, and ourselves and our family. We do have to come together as a country on this, and we'll continue to make sure we do our part.
Joe Kennedy, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks so much.
All over the way over there.
Appreciate it. We've invited Senator Ed Markey, by the way, to join us on Greater Boston as well. We're still waiting on him to schedule that time. But if you'd rather not wait, tune into Boston Public Radio tomorrow, where he'll be joining us.